This is the MGTOW Infinium here with another Infinium Free Talk. This Infinium Free Talk is entitled, We Lost Our Rights Long Ago. It is just a few days after the landmark SCOTUS decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. And in the days since that decision, women across the country have been vehemently protesting what they consider to be an illegal removal of their rights. As well, the legitimacy of the SCOTUS itself has been called into question by womanists and those simps who support them nationwide.
Rise up! For abortion rights! For abortion rights! Rise up! Rise up! Rise up! For abortion rights! For abortion rights! Rise up! Rise up! For abortion rights!
This is one of the most historic decisions that have ever been made in the history of the United States. This is unprecedented, but the Supreme Court went against precedent to make a decision around the privacy and the right to an abortion.
My brothers, in spite of the hypocritical hysteria surrounding the SCOTUS decision, be reminded of the fact that we men lost our rights long ago because of womanism. Furthermore, because of the ongoing growth of womanism, we men are considered as slaves in every sense of the word. My brothers, the following is some content created by Cornell Smith, which deals with just one of the myriad of issues we men face when it comes to our freedom, paternity fraud. In the use of this content, I cite fair use policies.
And then I got another phone call. You're like, man, you don't stop answering the phone. But what happened with this next phone call is the ex-girlfriend says, I've been having a conversation with my girlfriends and you don't pay me enough child support. What? WTB? or in some people's mind, WTF, or whatever that means to you. She said that you don't pay me enough. And I'm like, why would that matter to me about what your girlfriends think? I'm paying for a college fund for your child. I'm paying you support directly. I'm maintaining additional expenses. I'm helping for all of the extracurricular activities. What do you mean I'm not paying you enough money? Well, coincidentally, she just bought herself a new house and a new car. Oh, okay. All right, now I get it. You need more money. And somehow I'm supposed to make up the shortfall for your spending habits. I frankly don't agree. I said, if you think you can get more, take me to court. And sure enough, in a few months later, I get a sheriff at my door on Christmas. My wife at that time was a few weeks away from delivering our first child. And that scene was so disturbing that it caused my wife to have a panic attack and forced her into early labor. I got served with a child support lawsuit with a demand that was going to increase my support payment probably an extra $2,000 a month. And I was like, she's out of her freaking mind. I was like, there's no way that a court will make me pay that after they see what I'm already doing. Little did I know, the court frankly didn't give a flying flip about what I was already doing because it wasn't under a court order. And the support system was not making any fees off of my money that I was already paying. So what happened next? I recognized how if I didn't do something, I would go from my unlimited parenting time to 1 day a week and once every other weekend. Wow, how's that a deal for someone who wants to be an active parent? Reduce you from unlimited time to no time to essentially being blocked out. And then I said, well, tell you what, I want joint physical, joint legal custody, and I want my parenting time entered in the order. And eventually, a temporary order was issued, and it raised my support payment to 40% of my net take-home pay. Now, I'm trying to paint a picture here that this didn't do well for a guy who was responsible, who was doing the right thing other than picking the wrong woman. I owned up to my responsibilities. And when I got that order, it also reduced my ability to see the child down to once every other week and once every other weekend. And I was like, well, by design, that was done to set the support payment to a maximum and not really leave me with any resources to do anything with the child whenever I had the child. And then the mother started interfering with me seeing the child on the court-ordered days. So eventually I end up calling the police, getting the police involved, and the officer says, "Sir, I sure wish a lot more men did what you did. You called us up front, you brought us your court order, and I'm sorry to tell you, sir, Mr. Smith, there's nothing I can do about this. This is a civil matter, and you're going to have to take it to court." Eventually, I had a discussion with my pastor's father, and he says, "You need to take a paternity test." Huh? He says, "I've seen this kind of thing happen to many military men." He was from the Air Force. He talked to me about the Dear John letter scenario, how men lose family, resources, etc. And you need to take a paternity test. So I agreed to take this test, fully expecting to show him that I was indeed the biological father of this child. And instead, the results came back at 0.0% that I was not the father. Gentlemen and ladies, I have been framed for a pregnancy that I didn't commit, and I had legally admissible evidence to prove that I didn't do it. But by the existence of a baby, somebody did it. Wasn't me. This led to a journey of battling through the courts over a 5-year period, child support lawsuit, 2 bench trials, appeal to the Court of Appeals in the state, appeal to the state Supreme Court, and then an appeal to the United States Supreme Court, because I believe that a fraud had been perpetrated on me, on my family, and on the child. And by the way, what sane man would take the deal to pay child support for a child that's not his, that he can't even see? Think about that for a second. What do I get out of this deal? The right to pay and shut up, so they thought. But there's this rebel in me that says, I'm not going to be silent about this. I'm not going to be quiet about this. So while I was appealing, I recognized that men and boys who were caught in this situation have an extremely difficult time if they can't afford to put down a $25,000 retainer to bring in their own legal hired gun to help them fight back. And my attorney told me we had less than a 10% chance of winning with 2 DNA tests proving that I didn't do it. We subpoenaed the mother and her family members, and only then did we find out she actually got pregnant 6 weeks after I broke up with her. That is not the story that she told. How do you have less than a 20% chance of winning when you can prove you didn't do it? You can prove the other party knowingly and willingly concealed material facts from you that affected your participation. And what are those facts? I'm going to tell you why I call it paternity fraud. Paternity fraud is a lawsuit typically brought by someone like the child's mother or the legal guardian of the child to collect money, benefits, assets, property, while at the same time concealing material facts that there are multiple paternity candidates, or they know for sure that you didn't do it. Think about that for a second. The way the laws work in the United States, and for every country that adopts this type of process of child support to get money established, is that any man or any boy accused of being the father of a child is at risk for paternity fraud, even if he didn't know the mother, even if he never touched her, for one fatal reason. Here's the flaw. The flaw is there is no proof required to be filed by the mother or the legal guardian. There's no proof required that you did it to be submitted with that lawsuit against you. So with that being the case, I'm going to show you how there's actually 4 ways that I've found out and have many clients and victims that have found their way into paternity fraud, including men who didn't know the mother at all, men who had similar names to the biological father, but it wasn't him, it was the other guy, to many married men on my YouTube channel, to many military men who are victims of a thing called incorrect default judgment. I'm doing these presentations, I've been doing these for a couple of decades, and my whole goal is to help make this trap so transparent that Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder could see this thing. And my hopes is that you'll take something from this presentation, check me out, connect with me, and share this with people who have sons. Share this with men who are going through some difficulties and challenges, because as bad as it is to pay significant portions of your income for children that are yours, that you are not allowed to see and actively thwarted from being able to be an active parent, how much worse is it to find out that they're not even your kids? Can we say that is the ultimate punch in the face? And then for someone to tell you there's nothing you can do about it, and you may as well be quiet. You should just lay on the train tracks and take it. Well, I mentioned that I took it to the U.S. Supreme Court. They had 2 meetings about it, and the justices finally sent back an answer to me because they wanted to know about something else that I'd done. See, at the same time I was doing that, I talked to my legislators because I recognize this to be a trap. And unless the law was changed to recognize the substantive rights of men and boys to not be forced, you hear me, forced into surrendering assets, property, cash for another man's child against his will, a child that he didn't adopt, that he didn't participate in assisted pregnancy, in vitro fertilization, like when, the guy knows I can't create him, so he knowingly signs up to let his wife get some from the sperm bank, so he knows right up front, not his biological child. Well, in those scenarios, that guy's not a victim, right? It is called truthful disclosure up front. Well, I lobbied for legislation, and I managed to get a bunch of victims to come out and support the issue, because the more I talked, the more people found out there was somebody doing something about it, and it had happened to them, or it happened to a friend, a family member, someone who was so distraught and devastated that some of them have gone on so far as to have, like one of my clients, commit suicide over being devastated by the family court. Well, I was successful in getting legislation passed where people told me there's nothing you could do about it. So in working with the many people and supporters, we got the bill passed through the House of Representatives 163-0.
My brothers, what was described in the aforementioned content is the norm, not the exception. And it becomes particularly hypocritical when we as men cite these issues to womanists only to be met with censorship. Nevertheless, it is important to understand that the just because we are men argument is an unacceptable as well as illegitimate reason for what is essentially slavery. Thus, when it comes to issues like paternity fraud, number one, men should have the right to demand paternity tests when it is known the women that they are involved with are pregnant. Number two, if it is determined by paternity test that a child is not of his blood, then a man should be absolved of any and all responsibility, financially, legally, morally, from that point on. Number three, the determination by paternity test should be a legal as well as moral binder on courts in terms of preventing, because you're a man, default judgments against men. As well, and in cases where paternity fraud has been occurring long term, men, not the courts, should have the say-so and the right to do so when it comes to terminating all relationships with mates as well as children. Number four, it should be illegal to use a man's name on any document concerning paternity without solid proof of paternity. If a woman does use a man's name in such a manner, that activity should be construed as paternity fraud, and she should face stiff penalties such as fines and imprisonment. Number five, men who have been subjected to proven paternity fraud should have the right to seek and receive justice in every way possible. This includes anything from women being sued for restitution to them being imprisoned. My brothers, even though these line items seem harsh, consider the harshness that men have faced over the years because of paternity fraud. Consider the harshness of having life-altering changes which have stripped these men from everything from their freedom to, in some cases, their lives. My brothers, paternity fraud is just one of the reasons why I have absolutely zero sympathies for womanists and their issues. Additionally, this is one of the reasons why I have taken such a hard line lately with Nawalts and chameleons who say they are on the side of men. This is because they have had years to put their money where their mouths are at and still have not done so, thus making their useless mind vomit and useless regurgitation of our issues as men to be irrelevant. This is the MGTOW Infinium, and this has been an Infinium Free Talk. My MGTOW brothers, as always, stay safe, stay strong, stay on the MGTOW path, and remember, MGTOW is the liberation of men's minds. MGTOW cannot and will not be stopped.